Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. The investor's chief problem, and even his worst enemy, is likely to be himself. Benjamin Graham. Dr. David is back. The man, the myth, the friend. God, I gotta stop introing people as the myth, because there's how many myths are there? My good friend, Dr. David, is back. Advisor to the busy professional, to the successful. If you haven't heard him on the podcast before, you got to look through. There's many episodes that we've done about health optimization, about the mindset it takes to actually work on yourself and on your life, not in one-dimensional way, but Dr. David has a whole approach to actually be proactive in that space. And thanks for calling back to the Culture Matters podcast, brother.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy our conversations, and this is fun for me. So I love it. Hopefully, ask, go ahead.
5-hour energy, is that healthy?
Well, I mean, probably not. It depends. So the shorter answer is the dose makes the poison, and that's the father of toxicology. I think I can't remember his name, but he came up with that. And that's essentially the key for almost everything. And so that's kind of, my short answer for that. In small doses, you got to push through something. And of course, I'm not sitting here looking at the label and dissecting that, but for typically overall, that's the gist of it. If you're living on it, that's probably not a good idea. If you're pushing through on a really, sporadic basis using that, that's probably not a problem.
Have you ever heard of anyone ODing on melatonin?
No, actually. So melatonin is the official dogma is there's not any unsafe dose of melatonin. Melatonin's not a sedative. Now, I'd have to go back and review the literature in detail to make sure there wasn't some kind of case report or whatever, but and you want to obviously start low as possible and work your way up.
What, 100 milligrams?
So maybe like 1 or 2 milligrams. Some people even microdose with like a 500 microgram sustained release or something like that. Some people do that chronically just for sleep optimization. But even 10, 20 milligrams, if that's what it takes to work for you, could potentially be okay. As far as we know, all the data shows that's okay. Now there probably needs to be a little bit more research on that, but melatonin is not a sedative. So it doesn't sedate you like a typical sleep medicine would. It tells your body it's time to sleep. So it allows you to get a natural sleep, which is superior, in my opinion, to any other type of sleep medicine per se, like a pharmaceutical or something like that.
Do you think do people form dependency? Or is it psychological more so?
I think there's definitely probably some psychological dependency. There is some evidence that you don't form dependency on melatonin. So like with a lot of, which is interesting to me, and I kind of would like to see more data on that, because to me, this is a hormone, and almost all hormones have negative feedback loops, which means that if you have exogenous, or if you're taking it, then typically a hormone that you're taking exogenously will tend to shut down your natural production. But it doesn't look like that happens with, typical supplemental doses of melatonin. So it is safe to take if you need to take it for a while to get in a good sleep rhythm. I typically recommend it to, especially in, the typical dosing, which is, 3 to 5 milligrams is what you typically see over the counter.
Typical one?
Yeah, I would say most are somewhere in the 3 to 5 milligrams. Some you'll see 10 milligrams. But yeah, so I typically.
So if I'm taking 100 milligrams a day, what's going on?
Are you really taking 100 milligrams?
Oh, yeah. So I got a million questions for you. Like,
okay.
Go ahead.
That's probably okay. As far as we know.
But it just sounds nuts. If you're saying 3 to 5, that's 20 to 33x.
It sounds like a lot. It sounds like a lot. It makes me wonder if maybe there could be some other things we could work on that would make it to where you didn't need to take 100 milligrams.
Welcome to the Culture Matters podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So like there's sleep, and we could literally do probably multiple podcast episodes just on sleep optimization. Sleep is the foundation of health. And I'm really, it's one of the four, what I call the four pillars of health. And I feel like if your sleep isn't right, then everything else is gonna have downstream effects from that. Your exercise is going to be less effective, and you're going to be less likely to be able to even get motivated and all that stuff. Your nutrition is going to be poorer because you're probably not going to make wise choices, and that is actually borne out in the data. We can see that, and also we know that our hunger hormones change when we don't get enough sleep or the right quality of sleep. So even it affects our hunger hormones. So there's two hunger hormones in particular, leptin and ghrelin. And ghrelin, it looks like, is increased when we don't get the proper sleep. So ghrelin increases your appetite. So your appetite's increased, but also there's some other effects that it looks like we seem to be more drawn to high caloric foods and more palatable foods. So like just your willpower to eat the right type of foods is diminished when you're not getting the right sleep. So there's a lot of effects nutritionally, and also, it affects your effectiveness of your exercise program. And then it also significantly impacts your mental health. There's a lot of stuff to talk about there, but REM sleep in particular is significantly impactful on our mental health. REM sleep is like our natural antidepressant. And there's data on, people who have lack of REM sleep and suicide and all kinds of stuff like that. So their REM is, or sleep overall, is impactful on all of those other, what I call the four areas of health. So sleep is one, and then nutrition, exercise, and mental health. Or stress management, however you want to kind of categorize that. But stress management is one way I say it. But mental health, and just to clarify, mental health doesn't mean just like you have, a psychiatric illness. It just, anxiety, stress management, that kind of stuff.
How often would you say it's okay to, not sleep?
The dose makes the poison.
Because so there's entrepreneurs listening to this show.
Yes. So
it's like a license to self-deceive in the context of, well, I have a really good reason not to sleep or not to exercise or to eat this dinner with clients or ad infinitum, right?
If there's anybody that is their own worst enemy when it comes to getting the right sleep, it's medical students and physicians, particularly medical students and residents. So now I think that's improving. We know more. If I knew what I know now when I was in medical school and residency, I would have behaved totally differently. And so I'm saying that to say, I totally understand, the entrepreneurs that are just pushing through. I got to push through. I got to finish this project. And there are times when that might be the case. But the more you do that, the less effective you become. And if that becomes a habit, you're not being effective. Really, you're going to be more effective. You're going to get more done in less time by focusing on your health and your sleep, taking that extra time to sleep, taking that time to be diligent about your pre-sleep routine, which is really impactful on your quality of sleep, taking some time to exercise every day, even if it's just walking or any type of physical movement is an improvement over none. And so doing those things that you could almost feel guilty for, because you're taking time away from your work and your passion and all that stuff. The thing is, those things actually improve your productivity. And there's tons of data that shows that. So they improve the work that you're doing and the time you're doing it. So you don't necessarily need more time. What you need is improved productivity and clarity. And there's a lot of times people will have ideas during exercise time or things like that, or they'll wake up with ideas after they've slept and had a good sleep. So, and not that entrepreneurs are short on ideas, because they're typically idea people, but you get what I'm saying. So sometimes you end up with, clarity or moments of clarity when you're moving or when you're exercising. So I recommend that people, and to just full disclosure, I've been that person. I've been the person who has, sacrificed sleep and sacrificed exercise. And again, it's all relative, right? So it's not that you can never do it, and if you do, you're not going to be successful. But the more you can prioritize, your health is absolutely related to your performance. Our body and our mind and our physical health impacts our performance more than we realize. And so I think if you can develop some of those habits and honestly, I'm seeing this a lot more now in the entrepreneur community.
Really?
I'm seeing a lot more people that are taking care of their health, that are focusing on their sleep, that are exercising and staying in shape. And people are starting to realize this. The culture is changing a little bit from a just burn yourself to the ground, sleep is weakness. You can sleep when you're dead, that type of thing.
Is that like toxic, you think?
Oh,
That's
I think
part
in
of that
some
narrative.
I think it
What
can
is
be
the
that way.
balance?
I think in like again, back to the medical training community, I think there's some programs that it can be toxic in that way, and it's counterproductive. There's only so much your brain can do without sleep. And so there is a point where it's not just you're not operating optimally, you're actually being counterproductive. And so yeah, but I am seeing that change a little bit. I'm seeing the change. But I want to say I understand where people are coming from when they feel that way. So there's only so many hours in the day and it never feels like there's enough. So I get it. But you have to be careful, because it's hard to know to look at yourself in the moment and say, unless you're really in tune with yourself, to look at yourself in the moment and say, I'm not being effective in this moment, even especially if you're doing busy work, right? So you
What are
almost
some
kind of have to trust
signs?
the process, that treating your body and putting yourself in the optimal state of health is going to do a lot of work for you in that way and help you perform optimally. And that's one of the things I'm really excited and passionate about is looking at those things.
What are some signs someone listening to this might be going too hard, too far? They start seeing double. That's a clear one.
Yeah, that might be
Like, that might
be more of an extreme example. So I mean, what I would say is,
we're in an economic time where people are pulling back.
if it's to the point where you're noticing physical signs of being tired, you're way past the point where you should have stopped.
Ooh, what do you mean?
So if you are dozing off at your desk, or feeling like maybe mental fogginess, or if these physical signs, you should then that's too far. That's not the point you should take notice. You should probably stop and change your behavior prior to that. Does that make sense? Because now you've gone from, it's like a curve. So you've gone from, you're not even talking about optimal performance anymore. Now you're talking about being detrimental to not only your performance, but also to your health as well. So if you can figure out, what I would say is the best way to go about it is not to wait until you see signs of physical detriment, but to focus more on what you should do, not what you shouldn't do, right? So focus on getting 7 to 8 hours of good quality sleep. And there's a whole host of things we could talk about with what quality sleep is, but you want to definitely make sure you're getting a good amount of deep sleep and the right amount of REM sleep in each sleep session. And then overall, at least 7 hours of sleep. And for different people, for me, I kind of need closer to 8 hours to really feel like I'm functioning optimally most of the time, especially if I'm training hard. So I would say focus on getting good sleep, getting good nutrition, and getting your exercise and doing your mental health work to make sure you're staying in the right mindset and that you're managing your stress properly and everything like that, which again, all those other things will help you manage stress. Eating right, exercising, and sleeping right will all help you manage stress. So some of that will be taken care of, but that doesn't mean that it'll be super easy for you. You might still have to do some meditation and some mindset work too. So that's why I add that one in there. But what I would say is instead of just pushing hard until you can't go anymore, which again, I'm full disclosure, I've done plenty of times. It would be best to just focus on what you should do. And I've gotten much better at calling it quits before that happens. And it's hard to do, especially if you get in a groove, And I would say, okay, so say you're in a groove. If you're in a flow state and, maybe it's a little bit past your bedtime and you're in a flow state and you're being productive and you're firing away at, writing something or whatever, fine. Finish that. Then notice when that starts to kind of slow down a little bit, and then be disciplined enough to say, okay, I need to get some rest. Because the other thing that affects quality of sleep significantly is your circadian rhythm. So it's not just, you can't go to bed at 2 a.m. one day and 11 another day and 9 another day and then 1 a.m. and be all over the map and, have different sleep patterns. The best thing to do for performance and health is get up and go to bed at the same time every day. And that your body starts noticing and syncing your circadian rhythm. And circadian rhythm is your body's 24-hour clock. And if you think of your body and every cell as a factory, you have all these processes and pathways that are happening simultaneously. I mean, thousands are going on, and you're talking about DNA transcription and all of these things, your entire metabolic process. So if you think about that, everything isn't running at the same time, right? There are things that are running sometimes and things that are not. Well, what does your body use as a cue to know when to do that? Well, it uses your circadian rhythm. A lot of these things are based on circadian triggers. And some of those circadian triggers are light, exercise timing, food intake timing, the types of food you eat, and then your sleep timing. So if those are synced up and very regularly done at the same time every day, you will actually notice a performance benefit because your body is kind of queued up to have those processes. If that's all over the map, if you're doing all these things at different times in the day, your body, it's like confusing. It doesn't know when to run what. You're getting all these different signals. Apart. Yeah, you're getting all these different signals and your body doesn't know what to do with them. Yeah. So it's circadian biology is actually really, really fascinating. And humans are not the only organisms that have circadian. In fact, most organisms have some circadian rhythms. It's really, really fascinating. And one book that I think most people would be able to read is The Circadian Code by Dr. Sachin Panda. Really fascinating book.
What's it called?
The Circadian Code. And it talks about a lot of the different effects of the circadian rhythm on your body and your health even. So we know, for instance, like night shift workers have higher incidence of dementia, cancer, and all-cause mortality just from working at night.
Wow.
And so there again, that goes back to, that's probably multifactorial, but a big factor there is circadian biology. So I kind of went on a little bit of
Are
a
these
tangent.
people just like, I guess, how much of someone's fate is really influenced by their career in that sense?
Oh, I think a lot is. And in fact, I've been thinking about this a lot because one of my friends is a pilot, and he's been asking me a lot of questions. He's a PA. We were in the flight. He's a PA flight surgeon. We were in the aviation battalion together, and he went back to flying again. But one of the things that he's seeing is a lot of these pilots, their lifestyles is not healthy, right? But what do you do? What do you do with these careers that have to have, medicine, first responders, pilots, and those kind of folks? Now I was just thinking the other day about our mail delivery systems we have people working 24 hours a day. So unfortunately, some people are in careers. What I would say is try to minimize it as much as possible. If you can, if you have to do night shift, maybe do it as little as possible. Again, and this is kind of a theme that the dose makes the poison, and so the less you can do it, the less impactful it'll be on your health. But like with entrepreneurs, a lot of people are solopreneurs. They're doing a lot of stuff themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of them feel that it's on them. They're kind of the brain trust. It's their idea. And so sometimes it's difficult to even figure out as how to delegate to other people because it's like once you've delegated it and you've told somebody, you've basically done it yourself, right? And so it's that's difficult. So you end up spending a lot of hours doing things. And so, food timing, exercise, you feel guilty almost for taking time away to do those things, to prepare good meals and everything like that. But, in my opinion, if that is a relatively short season, when you're on a push and you're just getting through this big push for a launch or whatever it may be, okay, fine. Do what you got to do. Is it the best thing for your health? No, but I get it. This is real life, right? But if that ends up becoming a prolonged lifestyle, then that's a problem, right? So I think that's when you have to kind of examine yourself and say, okay, what can I do differently to maybe rearrange my priorities or start to maybe delegate some things.
Like, are there long-term studies on caffeine usage?
There are actually caffeine in itself. It hasn't really been shown to be detrimental. In fact, there was a recent study that came out maybe a couple years ago that showed up to 5 cups of coffee a day was life prolonging. So now
What about 50?
50 is probably too much. You're gonna end up
5 cups is a good start.
yeah. So yeah, that's that again, and like for you, for example, you're a reader and you're a studier and you read and you study and you spend a lot of time doing that. Your retention of that material would be significantly better if you were if your brain, and one of the things we discount is how sensitive our brains are to overall health. Our brains use up a significant amount of our energy every day. And they're very sensitive to those 4 core principles of health. So, that's just, using one example. But yeah, caffeine is actually a performance enhancer. But once you get to the point where you're over consuming it to make up for detrimental health habits, then you're probably going down the wrong road. Does that make sense?
Do you see that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yep.
How to be,
How do you fix
how do
that?
you backtrack?
Well, I mean, one thing I would do is I would start focusing again, and I'm very I typically try to focus on what to do and not what not to do, because and so what I would do is I would start focusing on those health promoting habits, and one of them is just getting and for instance, when I say get enough sleep and get the right quality sleep, you know, that starts probably an hour or two before bedtime. In fact, to some degree, this is going to blow your mind. I would typically say try not to drink any coffee or caffeinated beverages after noon. Now there are some people that are fast metabolizers of caffeine, and there's some people that are slow metabolizers of caffeine. That's a
You said
genetic.
PM, not AM.
Yes. Noon.
Oh, we're in
Noon.
trouble.
Yeah. But the cool thing is, the really cool thing is, Jay, when you start having a really optimal state of health and you start performing and living in that way, you don't need that caffeine, it feels amazing. It feels so good. And so, that moment, there's, hopefully you'll have that day where you're like, oh man, I don't even need this. I have so much energy, and like I've just buzzed through this day.
I thought that's what heaven would be.
Heaven on earth, man. Heaven on earth. So,
Wow.
so yeah, it is
12
possible.
PM.
It is possible. Yes. And
What about this information that people say, don't drink caffeine for the first 2 hours you're awake, just drink water?
right. So the theory that it affects the cortisol spike and then causes you to crash in the afternoon.
Is that a real thing? There's good literature on that, or?
There's not a lot of literature on that. That's more of a kind of, from what I could tell, because I have done a little bit of looking into that. And so from what I can tell, that is a kind of like a mechanistic extrapolation, if you will. So they're looking at they're kind of piecing a few things together and extrapolating what they believe it could be a potential effect. But from what I was able to find, there's not a lot of literature on that. Does that make sense?
Like a priori, it's not a posteriori. It's just
Right.
based on guesswork. It's not, or inference rather, not
Inference
deduction.
of deduction of there is literature out there probably about the effect of caffeine on
induction.
cortisol and everything like that. And I will say that I would have to talk to that person and see. There might be good literature that I'm not aware of. I did look for it because it's an interesting thing to talk about. And I thought about reaching out
to do that. And, there is a placebo effect in any time you're trying something new.
I don't think there's an actual study done on people with like doing that and actually performing the, people that took caffeine the first thing in the morning and people that waited for 2 hours. I don't think that study has been done per se, but I do believe that there is what I call mechanistic data. So data that's been done maybe in other areas that kind of implies that could be the case. Does that make sense? So I don't think he's just making it up. But I don't know that there's been like a head-to-head study, if you will. But I don't want to say there's not, because I don't want to act like I know every study that's ever been done either. So, and he's a very smart person too. So
I thought you were using ChatGPT.
No, ChatGPT, I don't even know what I could even use that for, to be honest with you.
So
But
what kinds of I guess crises are you seeing now, and or successes with people in the field, under this time? Like, is stress up? I'm curious, like what you're seeing, like as far as people that you're coming across, like has Wall Street touched Main Street as it relates to the general economy, culture? Are you seeing it in like the everyday people that are just checking in to the hospital, or that are hiring you, or seeking counsel for even just the private health optimization stuff?
when you say, what culture specifically are you talking about? Like the gunner culture?
Like the general, what's the air tell you? Like, what are you smelling out there?
Like what problems are people dealing with the most, or like
Yeah,
what
are you
are
seeing
they
like
doing wrong,
a
or
shift? I'll give you an
uh
example. I've had a
okay.
lot of these podcasts lately, filmed that have been recorded lately, and I keep hearing mindset. People are talking about mindset,
Oh yeah.
and I don't think that was a coincidence. I think it's like a symptom of the macro. Like it's like we have to tell ourselves, we need to have this mindset right now. Now, I'm not discounting having, you know, I'm not discounting a constructive rationalization. I'm just analyzing it.
I think in the entrepreneur field in particular, mindset is a uh very talked about concept. And I think that's because entrepreneurs are very thoughtful, and they're very reliant on persistence and dedication and grit, right? And so I think in the entrepreneurial field right now, mindset is key, because if you don't have the right mindset, that grit and that persistence is going to fade, and that motivation, right? And it's the same concepts that I deal with people with their health, right? And so mindset is really, really big with maintaining a proper healthy lifestyle. But also there's a parallel there with, being an entrepreneur, because if you're going to stay, some people say it's discipline, but it's really grit and persistence, right? And if you don't have that mindset, if you don't have the right mindset and you give up, if you can't make it through that valley of despair, if you will, that I'm sure you've heard about, to the informed optimism, then you're probably going to, when I say fail, I mean, really, you're going to give up, right? And so we have lots of failures and we have lots of losses, but we persist as entrepreneurs. And so I think that's the key to mindset with the entrepreneurial field. I'm not necessarily seeing a lot of mindset talk outside of the entrepreneurial world, to be honest with you. So I see it in the health and fitness industry, and I see it in the entrepreneurial field, and otherwise in coaching and things like that, right? So you see it in those fields where it really matters, where people are really trying to have some kind of transformational experience or change. And that's where I think mindset really, really is important. If you're just going to your 9 to 5, yeah, it matters. You do have to have the right, you got to show up to work. You have to have like a good enough mindset to do your job well and things like that. But the mindset I think that you're talking about is a little bit different. And I do see that with entrepreneurs. I see that with the people that I've coached. And one of the things that we talk about is, applying those principles that you've learned, that grit and that determination and that focus, applying all those principles, there's parallels in your health, right? And you can apply those same values and skills that you have that have led you to be successful as an entrepreneur. You can apply those same things to being successful in your health as well. But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm seeing a lot of that in, say, just general population of folks that I run into, in the hospital or wherever else.
What are you seeing?
Well, if you just talk about the typical things we're seeing in the world today, just a lot of skepticism and things like that. A lot of people it seems like there's a lot of, well, skepticism is one big one I see a lot of, but also, I wouldn't say lack of hope, but in individual tribalism. I'm seeing I feel like more tribalism, which I thought in this year we would start, as humans, start developing less as educated and everything as we are, but the world seems to be becoming more tribal. That's kind of tends to be, I think, our human nature to be a little bit tribal, but we can overcome some of those things. So yeah, those are some of the things I'm seeing just in general with people. skepticism and tribalism seems to be the predominant, if I were to say like a negative thing. But I'm also, there's a lot of people that are doing really good things as well. And people that are very generous. I've been blessed to be friends with people that are just genuinely good, generous people and caring and loving. And so that also, and selfless. So that's also something I'm seeing a lot of. And some of that might have to do with the people that I choose to be around, but yeah, so it's not just all bad. There's a lot of good people doing good things as well. What are you seeing? What are kind of, this question I feel like has some background to it. Like there's something I don't feel like I've fully grasped the depth of the question. I feel like I'm missing something.
Right. I'm just curious if you're, because you're in a, you interact with different people every day in a different environment.
Yeah.
And what are you seeing? Are you seeing anxiety, worry, fear, or excitement, hope?
Right.
That's because you're interacting with a lot of people.
Right.
On a weekly, daily basis, like everyday people. And it's not quite clear, hey, in some industries we're crushing it, and others we are, but relative to others, because they're being affected by money becoming more expensive, and supply increasing, demand decreasing. So I was curious what you feel and touch, and if you have a sense of what really is going on, because there's, by the time the things that higher up in the hierarchy reach the bottom, it takes time. Everything's as a lag.
Right.
So I'm trying to ask as many guests that as possible.
I think I'm seeing that, and I'm very blessed to live in a great community. So everybody from the staff that I work with at the hospital to even our patients are almost like, they're very good folks. They're good people. Most of them are kind and polite, and they listen to you. They're just trying to go about their daily lives. So I haven't seen we're a little bit insulated. We're in middle America, I'm right outside of Louisville, Kentucky. It's a Midwestern-ish, southern, kind of southeast Midwest mixture. So just good folks that are just kind of living their lives and trying to do the best they can. But we haven't had, in this area, we've had good economic times, relatively good economic times compared to some other areas in the country. So there's pretty good feelings right now, especially in our town. We just had this massive plant come in, and so everything is booming right now at the moment. So people are in good spirits overall. But even before that happened, people were genuinely just kind of kind and grateful, which is, it's one of the reasons I like to live here, because we draw our staff and our patients from our community. And so I get to work with good people, and I get to take care of good people. So that's something I'm very grateful for.